Rain fell in sharp, cold sheets, turning the forest floor into a slick, treacherous tangle of mud and roots. Lieutenant Mara Jensen pressed herself against the jagged bark of a tree, trying to catch her breath. Her left leg throbbed violently, every pulse of pain a reminder of the landmine that had taken her down earlier that morning. She had been on a routine reconnaissance mission with her unit when the explosion ripped through the undergrowth, sending her flying, disorienting her senses. The enemy territory around her was crawling with hostile forces. Shadows moved between the trees, rifles clutched tightly, eyes scanning for any sign of her. Mara's radio crackled, but only static returned. She cursed under her breath, trying to adjust the frequency, wishing for just a single trace of connection to her team. She knew extraction was impossible. They'd moved on after the ambush, leaving her behind. The thought of betrayal and abandonment gnawed at her, but panic had to wait. Survival came first. She limped silently, dragging herself over the muddy ground, careful to avoid snapping twigs or drawing attention. Each movement was agony, the wound in her thigh burning as if set alight. Mara forced herself to ignore the pain, focusing instead on the rhythm of her breathing and the sounds of the forest. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Or was it the enemy? The mind played tricks when adrenaline and fear intertwined. The forest canopy overhead did little to hide the gray, rain-soaked sky, but it offered some cover. Mara spotted a shallow depression in the earth, partially hidden by brambles, and crawled toward it. She pressed herself into the shelter, trying to make herself small, imperceptible. Her fingers fumbled in the mud to stabilize her radio, which now rested in a puddle of water. She whispered into it, voice hoarse, hoping, praying, that someone, anyone, could hear. Minutes stretched into hours, and the rain showed no signs of letting up. Mara's eyes scanned the tree line, ears straining for the slightest hint of footsteps, the snap of a branch that might give away her presence. Every sound set her heart racing, but she forced herself to stay calm, measuring each movement, calculating each breath. She had been trained for survival, but no training prepared her for the crushing isolation and the knowledge that the world had moved on without her. As night approached, the forest darkened to a near impenetrable black, broken only by the occasional flicker of lightning. Mara's body shook, fatigue and hypothermia setting in, but she forced herself to remain awake, radio pressed to her lips. Somewhere in the vast, hostile expanse, hope had to exist, she told herself. Somewhere, someone would hear her. The forest seemed endless, threatening, alive, and Mara Jensen, wounded and alone, refused to give in. She was still out there, still breathing, still fighting. The first step toward survival had been taken. Now, all she could do was wait, and pray that her voice reached someone before it was too late. Somewhere miles away, in a rugged outpost perched on a cliff overlooking enemy territory, Sergeant Alex Monroe tapped his finger against the radio console, eyes narrowing at the static-filled signal. The unit had been scanning frequencies for hours, looking for any signs of the lost Recon team after the ambush. And now, there it was. A faint, broken transmission, almost imperceptible under the static, but unmistakably human. Echo. Repeat, can you hear me? The voice was faint, strained, laced with desperation. Alex leaned closer, adjusting the dial, heart thudding. This is Sergeant Monroe. Identify yourself. Over. A pause. Then, ragged, breathless, Lieutenant Mara Jensen, wounded, need, extraction. The words were punctuated by coughing, pain, and static, but they carried a weight no one could ignore. Alex motioned to his team. We've got her. Prepare a route. She's alive, but she won't last long if we don't move fast. Back in the forest, Mara pressed the radio closer to her lips, praying her trembling fingers could keep it steady. The faintest hint of recognition in the voice on the other end made her chest tighten. She had thought all hope was gone. Every second that ticked by felt like hours, but finally, someone knew she was out there. I hear you, she whispered, voice barely audible. Please, hurry. The Recon team suited up, checking weapons, medkits, and night vision gear. The storm hadn't stopped, and the forest beyond the perimeter was dense, unforgiving. But training and experience took over. They would get to her. Every step into enemy territory carried risk, landmines, patrols, snipers, but every second counted. Alex's team moved in silence, boots sinking into mud, eyes scanning shadows, muscles tense, radios on low frequency, listening for updates. Mara struggled to remain hidden, each noise outside her small shelter making her wince. Rain ran down her face, soaking her uniform, chilling her to the bone. She tried to stay as calm as possible, breathing through the pain, whispering coordinates to the team. Each crackle on the radio gave her hope, each response from Alex's team a lifeline in the darkness. As the night deepened, shadows shifted unnervingly. Mara's senses were sharpened by fear and pain. The sound of distant movement made her flinch, but then, clearer than before, came a voice over the radio. "Hold on, Lieutenant. We're close. Can you hear the sound of the river?" She strained to listen. Yes, the rushing water near her location. That meant they were using natural markers, moving carefully to avoid enemy detection. Relief washed over her, followed immediately by anxiety. She wasn't out of danger yet. Minutes felt like an eternity. Then she heard it. Light footsteps on wet leaves, deliberate, cautious. Her heart pounded in rhythm with the storm. The extraction team was here. She allowed herself a brief, shivering smile, but her body tensed again at every rustle in the dark. The final hurdle was near, reaching them without alerting the enemy, without succumbing to exhaustion, without letting the pain win. Mara whispered into the radio, voice shaking but determined. I'm ready. Please, just get me out of here." Branches snapped under careful steps, and the crunch of leaves was muffled only by the relentless rain. Mara could hear the team approaching, every sound amplified in her ears. Her thighs screamed with pain each time she shifted, but she forced herself to stay low, her eyes scanning the dark forest for any signs of enemy patrols. Then, through the static of her radio, Sergeant Monroe's calm, steady voice broke through. "Lieutenant Jensen, we're right outside your position. Stay low. We've got you." Relief washed over her, but it was tempered by fear. The enemy was near, and one wrong move could mean disaster. She tightened her grip on her radio, whispering back, "I see shadows, I'm moving toward you slowly." Every movement was agony, dragging her injured leg through the mud, feeling the sting of her wound with each inch. She counted her breaths, careful not to make a sound, until she finally saw a faint silhouette emerging from the downpour, a figure carrying a first aid kit, flashlight cutting through the darkness. "Lieutenant," Alex called softly, "here, on my left. Just a few more meters." Mara summoned every ounce of strength, pushing through pain, fear, and exhaustion. Her hands clawed at roots and rocks, her chest burning with effort, but the sight of human faces, the team she trusted, kept her going. One final lunge, and she collapsed into the arms of the medic, who immediately assessed her injury, securing her to a stretcher. The extraction was a tense ballet. The team moved quickly but cautiously, navigating the forest, avoiding known enemy positions. Mara felt herself being carried, every jolt and shift sending waves of pain through her body, yet each step forward was a victory. She allowed herself a brief smile when the sound of a hovering helicopter reached her ears. The extraction chopper had arrived, and freedom was near. As the chopper landed, rotors thrashing rain into a mist, Mara felt tears mix with the mud on her face. She was alive. She had survived enemy territory, injury, and isolation. The Recon team helped her aboard, securing her while keeping their eyes vigilant on the tree line. As the helicopter lifted off, the forest disappearing beneath the rain-soaked canopy, she finally allowed herself to breathe fully, feeling the weight of fear and pain begin to lift. Wrapped in a blanket inside the chopper, her voice trembled as she spoke into the radio one last time, reporting her safe extraction. The team around her cheered quietly, sharing nods and subtle smiles, proud of their successful mission and the resilience of the woman they had rescued. Mara's hands, still shaking from the ordeal, gripped the rail tightly, but the gratitude she felt was overwhelming. She had made it through, against impossible odds. Later, as she was stabilized at the field hospital, Mara recorded a short message for viewers who followed stories of courage and survival. "Thank you for staying with me through this. If you want to hear more stories of strength, hope, and resilience, make sure to subscribe to her story's words. Every story is a journey, and every journey is worth sharing." She smiled faintly, exhausted but alive, knowing that her story, once a desperate call for help, was now a testament to human courage and the power of never giving up.